I did one called Mass of Massachusetts poets, and Wieners was one of them. Obviously, Garrett Lansing, Larry Eigner. Let me find that and put it in the chat.
Okay, I'm gonna mute everybody. It's time to start here. Okay, hold on a second.
Sounds good.
Okay, here we are, December 7th, 2024, a lit bomb that will live in infamy, we hope. Anyway, take it away, Mark.
Thank you, John. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We experience the poetic magic of many poets, writers, including Christopher Shipman, Kevin Gallaher, Dorothy Friedman August, Daine Rieves, Peter Marra, and we are delighted to have you tonight. But before we begin with the feature, let me first tell you a little bit about my co-host, Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who received his MFA with studying with Allen Ginsberg. Jeff, excuse me, is best known as a new romantic poet. He's a publisher, critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. He's the author of 19 books of verse, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in the Cafe Review, New American Writing, the Brooklyn Rail, the Hurricane Review Posit, and many others. And his most recent work appears in the anthologies Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. Jeff's latest work is a book of sonnets and artwork called Doppelgangster, which is out from Mad Hat Press. And he recently won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize. And I believe that book's already out. And he also publishes Live Mag.
Hey, Mark, how nice. Thank you very much. Um, I was just going to say, because it is International Puppet Day.
Yeah, sure it is, man. Hey, listen, guys, I just wanted to read this little poem for you in honor of. Did you know that Mark's middle name is Keats?
Is that true?
Well, anyway, this poem is called, uh, what is it called?
I, I don't know. It's your poem.
Oh, yeah, Truth and Booty. Truth is booty and booty truth. That's all you need know, or my name's not Pinocchio.
Well, your name's not Pinocchio.
Oh, that's called poetic license, Jeff.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Truth is booty.
Yeah, I helped Keats with that one.
Oh, good. That was a good move.
Hey, thank you.
All right, Rufus. Truth is booty and booty truth. That's all you need know in this world. But my name's not Pinocchio. Oh, this is a little sonnet called Hawk's Nest, which actually is also a park in West Virginia. The mighty elm shakes off its robe of yellow and stands naked, save for a hawk's nest wedged in the crook of 3 branches. The sky above is utterly blue, a pitched tint. Cold streets lead to hot spots, shrines, and loading zones. Zerker Gallery, Firestone. You bring a long-stemmed rose. I fix us a drink. The truth is free, but no bargain. It charges a premium for a pardon. I can't quell the rioting in my calendar. Folly follows me like a limping hound. 1,000 needles shelter in my bad eye. If you were a compass, I'd claim north, the way a stubborn nest sticks in its perch. Hawk's Nest. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our Southern Hemisphere friend there, Cassandra Atherton. Cassandra is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Estonian, no, wait, next time, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens, with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia, and the hostess with the mostess here at Lit Balm. Cassandra.
Jeff, yeah, it's sad that this is the last one for the year, but I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic one. So I'm excited to hear the readers. But here is my prose poem. It's one of the ones that I get asked to read, and we have a lot of Christmas readings here at the moment. So it's called Bonds. You wore a white Bonds t-shirt to bed last night, a plain white, no-nonsense Bonds t-shirt, and I knew it was over. I heard the death knell. And when you asked me if I was Emily Dickinson's ear, I nodded. Solitary, solitaire, solipsist. For whom does the bell toll, you asked that afternoon? Campanologists? Chewing campana? Campaniles? It tolls for thee. R.I.P. my lover. R.I.P. my Van Winkle. Rip out my heart, wrap it in your white t-shirt and bury it beneath your floorboard, still beating, my little drummer boy. You can beat me, but I won't be your fiendish queen, my butcher. My blood on your t-shirt will form a scarlet letter. Spot, out damn spot. You wore a white t-shirt to bed last night when all I wanted was to be stuck to your back, when all I asked was to peel myself off you in the morning and mount your erect compass needle. But now we are done, and you peel me like a grape. I slither out of my skin. Skinner, skin me alive. I thought we were conjoined, destined to travel in circles until we met again in the middle, until we found our core. But like Nabokov's apples, all you manage to achieve is to tempt me with repetition, when I am only your dystopian Eve. There can be no valedictions here, so now our lives are cotton, and although cotton breathes, it's also the sarcophagus of our relationship, embalmed memories. But I promise to dig you up, like Heathcliff or Rossetti. I promise to unbind you and gather you in my arms, skin on skin. My sweat will be our glue as I rip off that t-shirt and bond you to me one last time. So I have the pleasure of introducing Mark Vincennes, one of my favorite things to do on Lit Balm. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently The Pearl Diver of Urunmani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, and the Mayfly Codex. I think they are all stocking stuffers, Mark. People need to buy one. Put them in there. Forthcoming poetry collections are Spells for the Wicked with Unlikely Books, Ironclad with Spite and Dival, and No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. Mark is also a prolific translator and is translated from, the regulars know this one, German, Romanian, and French. He's published 12 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue, Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, you know his name, Klaus Mertz. And this one, the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, Icelandic, and I reckon, Jeff, Estonian is on its way. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has recently become translations editor of the Fortnightly Review. He has lived all over the world. Here we go, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, which you all know is Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick. And there are more. Are you waiting for it? There are still more large-mouthed bass, spice-bushed swallowtails, and hoary elfin than talking and walking apes. It was a special one. Loved it, Mark. Loved the added line for the Fortnightly Review to keep us on our toes.
That's right.
Please.
That's right. And Cassandra is about to become the dispatcher's editor over there as well.
Yeah,
So,
I'm very excited about that.
so keep your eye out for
Yes.
that. This poem's called Loving William Tell. And as some of you know, I'm half descended from Swiss. So here we go. Loving William Tell, starring Lorenz Vincennes Senior in 8 loving acts. 1. Any worthy Etruscan chef. My grandfather Tut, like any worthy Etruscan chef, said he always dreamed profoundly, but inefficiently. Those practical Sangiovese Romans, he would sometimes mutter begrudgingly over a glass of Vino Nobile Montepulciano, entwined in the fumes of a twisted Ticinese Culebra cigar, while contemplating the appropriate method for browning pork chops in chipolata onions, butter, and balsamic vinegar. 2. The congregation gathers. He excelled in many other ways. For example, in Grandma Tata's dog-eared photo album that smelled of cold cream. Serratum refrigerans. There was a black and white of him at the age of 20-something, raising a solid pinewood door with 7 beefy lads in various lazing positions, perched upon it, millimeters from his freshly brill-creamed, widow-peaked head. In a game of 5, cards raised, grandmother casually recalled that evening that the church bells had rung half an hour early. We were particularly blessed that night, she said, tossing her second ace of that creamy hand. 3. Crossbow and apple. Another shtick Tut relished was bouncing a razor-sharp carving knife on his hefty biceps while preparing a bouillabaisse for 27 hungry Swiss army recruits. He also claimed he could, with ease, crossbow in hand, cigar fuming beneath his simple, ample moustache, score a hat trick. Apparently, with his 20/20 vision, he could hit a fly at 27 yards, a hair's breadth above the head of his eldest and most promising child, and thereby ratify the Constitution of the Swiss Confederation. At the age of 25, he summoned his zeal and demonstrated his skill on the parallel bars. We never once doubted him. 4. Coattails and postcards. Was it Max Frisch who said that Switzerland never generated sufficient literature to render a single postcard? The black and white photographs of Edelweiss and the Matterhorn withstanding. And truth be told, that's not quite true. Just because we are neutral outsiders, believe we are stand on the fences who let our little coattails rattle gently in a cool, whimsical mountain breeze. We, as everyone does, have faith in the word, Tut said, chewing on the tip of his cigarette. 5. The season of cheeses. And although he neglected his faith in idiom, Tut savored his cheeses in air-cured Wurstel, pickles doused in alpine herbs, and the garlic-infused rabbit gently roasting on the spit, or that long, twisted cigar he smoked like a world fuming within himself. 6. Almonds and goats. Once he told me he had worshipped the gleaming brass buttons on his Welsh girlfriend's tight little lederhosen, she who wore them as and when the alpine phone finally broke. Oh, and the transmutations of truffles in the hidden valleys, and the ideal subgenera of pig, most suited to snorting beneath the dirt of certain oak trees, and the almost undetectable, delectable mercies clicking to their heart-soothing mercies, or the wolves, a creation circling softly, crisscrossing national borders on transnational whims. This, he told me while sipping on an after-dinner Armagnac and loading his pipe with something unusual from Algiers. 7. Nuts and pasta and castanets. There will always be another carbohydrate revolution, said Tut, sifting the semolina. No one wants someone else to crack an egg over their head. Eventually, just like ravioli, someone's revolt will spread. That's why we remain neutral in all things, he said, slicing a piece of ham for the filling, but tossing it out the window at a stray dog. 8. Primavera and Pinole. And they, who dreamed of Switzerland and her clean, vitrified alpine air, said he, tearing up, peeling an onion. She, with her bountiful coffers of conifers and pine cones and their fine courses, and those little ants by the bazillions, fertilizing pine trees and harvesting the pine nuts for their little pine children. As such, the discourse between father and pining offspring, said he, crushing the garlic, chopping the chives, brutally massaging the chicken breasts in their salty, musty brine. And now I'm delighted to introduce our first feature for tonight, who is Christopher Shipman, who lives on Eno's Saponayo and Shakatori land in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he teaches literature and creative writing at New Garden Friends School and plays drums in the Goodbye Horses. Chris Shippy's most recent work appears in Fence, New Orleans Review, Poetry, and many other places. His experimental play Métaphysique de l'éphémère has been staged at 4 universities. In collaboration with Vincent Ciuluti, Getting Away with Everything is his most recent poetry collection. You can see more of him at cshipmanwriting.com, but I'll post that in the chat. Welcome, Christopher.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks so much, and thanks all of you for being here. Can't wait to hear everyone else read as well. I'm just going to read, I think, 5 poems if I have time. We'll see. I chose some work that is timely, I suppose. It's been sort of a rough year for my family, and we are headed to Arkansas to see my family soon for Christmas. So I chose some work that is really sort of highlighting family and the upcoming holiday. So let's jump right into it. A couple of these are really old. It's really cool that Cindy is here because I am reading. I'm going to start with a couple of poems from my very first book, which was published in actually around this time of year in 2012. And Cindy actually reviewed it for Pedestal magazine. So I have not read from this book in probably 10 years. So bear with me a little bit. So this is the first poem I actually ever wrote for my wife, and this was a Christmas gift to her. So this is called Human Being Theater. It's a surreal prose poem. The blue of your eyes is looking at a light, white sparkles of a dress reflects as the winter of nowhere of iced-over ponds. We skate into the forests of each other's sad little trees of sequins during carnival season. Which is like walking into a piano recital we didn't know was happening until we were gone, until it was over, until we were in the dark of a closed theater. Which is like opening your eyes to see a girl, wildfire girl, taming a snake. If that's the lie you need to tell yourself, to tell your skull, to turn your head, to hold my hand, please turn your head, please smile, smile, smile. It's Christmas. This poem is called Till You're Good and Ready. My grandfather's red recliner was a throne in which he cushioned countless coronations as the tolerant sovereign of our household. He dozed away most holidays watching westerns, but Christmas meant movie marathons he turned off with snores louder than the gunshots. My grandmother smothered him with treats, tree-shaped graham crackers and peanut fudge, that put him deep in dreams of Michigan winters he never fully remembered while awake. At 5, he had me clad in lumberjack flannel, pressed Wranglers, and a little boy number 5 haircut. I kicked around on my hands and knees like a peasant begging for food, groveling at the snakeskin cowboy boots that dangled off the recliner above my head. While my grandfather slept, his fat chihuahua sat like a loyal sentinel. Hidden under the tufts of a patchwork quilt, he growled at everyone who walked by with gifts to tuck under the tree. My grandmother warned me not to get too close to my grandfather when the dog was knotted in the quilt, like a fever dream, she might have said. But I crawled closer to the fake tree, lured by its tinsel hair, its silver sleeves of garland, its icicle fingers and pregnant mound of presents, as if it mothered what my grandfather had dreamt of cold winters since his first heart attack ripped his chest open. I grabbed the smallest present with my name tagged in ribbon and scurried behind the recliner to sneak a peek at what was coming. The first rip, and my grandfather roared awake, shoved his shaky, swollen hand at me. "Don't you dare come out from there," he said, "till you're good and ready." So I'm just going to read a few more. A couple of them are fairly new, one of them somewhat. This one is called Occasional Poem. Let's see if I have 2 computers I'm using now. Occasional Poem. In one hand, 2 dead wasps, wadded in a fistful of toilet paper, the other tracing a finger over the lip of a vintage Christmas coffee mug. That's me at the dining room table. I won't get up to flush the slaughtered wasps or go for another coffee warm-up run. Across the table, my daughter stands squinting over her new scrapbook. She's doing an 8-year-old's work. Between us, phone at half volume, John Henry Falk is telling her his Christmas story from the radio program Voices in the Wind, circa 1974. I stay put. I ignore, my bad posture worsening with age, for the young wilderness of my daughter's wonder, the wide silence of its trees. If you can't tell, this moment is important. If you're wondering about the wasps, my in-laws said they're getting in via the fireplace. I wonder if I have in me the human equivalent, if I could trade cruel December snow for brick and ember, to sink stinger first into an unknown that might save me, might ruin me. The wasps that make it, some cling to the curtains in the family room, others crawl across the carpet like drunken caricatures of themselves. If you're wondering, this poem wants to sink toward a more hopeful moment than that, to find a way back to the human wilderness mentioned above, its voice a calm wind. If you can't tell, it's the day after Christmas, which means it's the day before my in-law's anniversary, this one the 53rd. Imagine this, 53 years of moments, a forest of them, every tree a wild candle. Is anything as human, more hopeful? This one's called Family Movie Night, which I have never read aloud until this moment. So here we go. Family Movie Night. When Iceman appeared, that's when you got teary. I know you know. I just need this moment to say I saw you. That I knew before we pressed play how it would all go down. You cozy on the couch next to your dad, the window to your left, an idyllic display of Christmas snow. The dog asleep by the patio door, the cat on her pillow. I knew we'd settle into that cinematic image. The family on movie night. Enough popcorn to purge our pity and fear. Me sneaking a look between bites at the beginning of every scene. Maverick, the wild pilot careening through clouds. Maverick reprimanded. Maverick elbowing the bar. Then it happened as if scripted. Your flinched the moment Maverick entered Iceman's office. There was Val, wearing a scarf to hide the hole in his gorgeous throat. And somehow you were also there, hiding somewhere under his massive desk, a scared kid in a red baseball cap, the one I've been told you wore for years. Your objective correlative when you demanded your brothers call you Maverick. Your keeper of dreams, the best defense against a blur of adult fears focusing into view. What I'm trying to say is I saw you, beneath the blanket that belongs to the couch, cozied up by the old man. Yes, but also kneeling at the grassy edge of your childhood, coaxed there by the fire of it, inside the cave of it, inside the forest of it. Because grief is where aging begins, you forced a laugh when your dad said he named the pills he refuses to take Vincent. The world rendered a Van Gogh painting. And because crawling in the direction of that laugh meant crawling through a forest dark as the future, you crawled out of your skin to find yourself under a desk in a movie about fighter pilots. You carried there the news of your dad's diagnosis. The first cancer cleared, now the spot found on his liver. Time to let go, Iceman typed. Below the words, someone sang. You saw it in Maverick's eyes, the anaphora of grief, and what guides us through it. The window to your left, the fire in the family room, waiting to be resurrected, the screen's dusty eye staring you down, the runtime, the closing credits. So I'm just going to end with one more. And this is sort of a surreal prose poem. Just kind of runs in, the lines sort of run into each other, which is a form that I've been working with for a while now. I've just finished recently a book about the murder of my paternal grandmother in 1970, and I never knew her, but my father was 10 when it happened. But all of her children, except for him and his older brother, witnessed it happen. And anyway, it's sort of about this event. Missing story. If it is missing, it must be told. It must be nearly Christmas. It must be dusk, crouching in the windows like a dying animal. It must be hiding behind darkening walls where poverty demands dinner plates lick clean, where the kids can settle into place, where quotidian actions of play can hatch domestic shadows. There in the kitchen, a toy car shivering across cold linoleum. There a second-hand doll climbing into its bed of laundry. There a cardboard crown, a shield with crayoned coat of arms, a plastic sword drawn to the vacant hall, where none of them know how far patterns cast against tonight's walls, that every night after will begin begging comparison, compare their relative innocence to the drag of the brick against the window frame, that throat-clearing rasp, compare flecks of blue paint only the house hears fall, to silence as a breath against glass, compare seeing blue paint chips piled on the floor beneath the windowsill as feathers missing from a bewildered bird, to none of them seeing the man sneaking out of the bathroom with a brick, none of them hearing his human mouth expel a human breath, compare the weight of passing decades to the weight of his breath lingering like a fog against the glass, that it will remain a lingering fog, to now, down the hall, the kids shadowing their mother's scream, their eyes open, narrow as dust, to them becoming a part of something crueler than fiction, something trapped in the storied darkness beneath the bed. Compare the demands of being trapped to drawing a map of the sky on the floor where dead bugs are fallen stars, where seconds before stories kept the world what it was, where now a monster claws out a story that never ends because it's never told, where now the feet of their father's brother, now the raised hand they can't see, or the brick it holds, or the brick it holds, or the brick it holds, or the brick held in the falling silence. Compare this to Christmas, to every story the mother ever told, crouching in the windows. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher Shippey. Well, next we hear from Kevin Gallaher, who is a poet, publisher, and political economist living in Greater Boston. He is the author of 10 books of poetry, most recently And Yet It Moves from Mad Hat and The Wild Goose from Loom Press in 2022. He's the editor of Spoke, a Boston-based annual of poetry and poetics. And he was co-editor of Compost in the 1990s and of features on Kenneth Rexroth, Denise Levertov, and the Boston area poets Sid Corman, Jarrett Lansing, Larry Eigner, and Charles Olson for Jacket in the early 2000s. Kevin's poetry and essays have appeared in the Partisan Review, Harvard Review, Green Mountain Review, Arts Fuse, and many more. He works as an economist and director of the Boston University Global Development Policy Center, where he has authored or edited more than 20 books on the global economy and the future of prosperity in the global South. Kevin lives in Greater Boston with his family in Rexroth, the family German Shepherd. He is an avid fan of the greatest basketball team in the history of the world, the Boston Celtics. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Great to read alongside everybody here tonight, and great to be back here. I'm gonna share screen if I may, and I'm gonna read from my 2023 book called "And Yet It Moves," published by Mad Hat Press. Hold on here. And Yet It Moves is a translation from the Latin that I can't pronounce. And it is supposedly what Galileo muttered underneath his breath when he was being sentenced to life in prison by the Medici popes, who ironically had financed him to discover what he was being tried for, which was proving that the earth revolved around the sun and not vice versa. It wasn't until Halloween 1992 that the Vatican admitted that they made a little bit of a mistake there. I think I guess in today's language, it would translate into you can't handle the truth. First poem, Petrarch, 1336. How much conviction do we have to trample the appetite of the earth beneath us? I was invisible, hidden in the darkness. I had no idea how hard it might be, but it doesn't matter with me now. I was moved to wander up the mountain, to see the vast swell of the oceans, to smell the broad waterfalls diving into the rivers, and to live through the revolution of firing stars. I made it to the mountaintop, and I will not stop there. 200 years later, a book hunter rediscovered On the Nature of Things by Lucretius. It has been so dark that you couldn't see me. The Bible shows us how to get to heaven, but it won't show us how the heavens go. I have the slow feet of 1,000 years. I learned by doing what I had to know. We are not the center of the universe. Truth is the testimony of sense. Heaven and matter, the same sentence. Atoms and nothingness and nothing else. History returns, so let go of your hold. I didn't know that Botticelli's Birth of Venus is actually a translation of one of the poems in Lucretius's On the Nature of Things. Rather than walking on water, you glide across a green jade sea, a figurehead painted on the bow of history that has finally come out of its shell. Wind and clouds are quiet in your presence. Zephyr and aura make love in mid-air. You cover yourself with your golden hair. You look at me and right through me at the same time. The hour is quick to try and cloak you, but the wind and your aura blow it away. The ocean smooths your weary breasts as a quiet peace is restored across the world. For thee, the world perfumes of seasons. For thee, I paint light on the shining shore. Cosimo de' Medici. I, Cosimo de' Medici, divine am I inside and out. and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. I know someone always wants to kill me, so I multiply my wealth and might without forgetting that I must be loved at home and across the world. If your family attempts to rival mine, I will see to it that you are taxed to death. Anything that I leave behind will remain here forever. The people in Florence love me, as do dukes in London, Naples, and Cologne. But just in case, I sleep while heavily armed and switch bedchambers 3 times a night. The Pope said there will be no usury, so I just charge a tiny little fee to insure myself from default risk. My florin has 54 grains of gold and can be exchanged for anything sold just about anything, anywhere around the world. I do well to pick a client of the Pope, but vow to never go against his will. When I went to build my first palazzo or palace, I chose David for the court by Donatello. My David is life-sized, bronze, and naked. His hand is on his hip with a flowering hat and a smile just breaking. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Don't be shy or scared of my wings. I have come to you to plant a seed. Don't pull away. Listen, you will give birth to the greatest being. His return will set us free. You have been chosen to be the mother of God. Open your heart, Mary. You will see that you are bearing the fruit of a great king. Pray for our sinners now and as we plead at the hour of our death and dying. You have no idea how much love you will bring. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. The Medici then go on to become basically the rulers of the Western world. And this is Lorenzo de' Medici, painted by Vasari. They tried to kill him on the altar, and this is what he had done. We stripped him, threw a noose around his neck, tossed him from the window, and he swung like a pendulum, leaving his time. We buried him out in the country, then dug up his corpse and dragged him through the city by his noose. We slapped his rotting head against his family's door like a knocker. We paraded to the Arno, and we threw him in. From all over the great city, they watched him float down the river. We dragged him out, tied a rope around his skeleton's neck, hung him from a willow tree, smashed his bones, then sank him in the Arno and did it all over again. More quick poems here. These guys subsidized Galileo, who created the telescope and found that the Earth revolves around the sun. Earth is the center of the universe. The sun, the moon, and all the planets spin around us in perfect eternity, said Aristotle to Ptolemy. Copernicus said it was we who spin a full revolution every day and travel around the sun each year, the creation of the best artist of them all. But Copernicus only had his books, his naked eye, and his equations. He so feared the scorn he would face, he spent decades checking his figures. He published his work on his deathbed and was laughed at by generations of fools. Index Decree 1616. We have learned of the spread and acceptance of a false Pythagorean doctrine, most contrary to the Holy Scripture, that the earth moves and the sun does not. To ensure that this opinion won't advance to the prejudice of the Catholic truth, such books of heresy and error shall henceforth be condemned and prohibited. We suspend all such books until corrected wherever and in whatever language. Thou shalt not read them. Thou shalt not own them. Thou shalt not print them. Surrender them to your inquisitors at once upon reading this decree. Touching these Gospels, I, Galileo, swear I believe in the Catholic Church. I have been suspected of heresy, a suspicion justly conceived of me. I entirely abandon the false doctrine that we are following the sun and the sun doesn't move. The earth is the center of the universe. I curse and detest these said heresies. I swear I will never say or assert anything that will bring further suspicion that I am not a servant of the Lord. If I break these promises, I submit to penalty, and yet it moves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was amazing. Wow, what a treatise, huh? You treated us with your treatise there. Aurora and Zephyr, so many wonderful things. I feel like I was in a graduate course there for a little while. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you, Kevin Gallaher from Boston. All right, let's see now. Gives me great pleasure here to introduce our next reader, who I've known for a long time and admired, Dorothy Friedman August, widely published poet and editor. Excuse me. She's won 2 New York Foundation of the Arts grants, an Acker Award, and others, and published 2 books of poems, Family Album and The Liberty Years. Third book, The L-Shaped Room, will be published by Poets Wear Prada. Oh, this is a little old here, 2022. She's completing 3 other collections, Drinking Alaska, As If, and Open-Ended, and The Bastard Heirs, a memoir. You have 2 children, though. Never mind. Many additional publications in periodicals and anthologies include The Partisan Review, Word, Big City Lit, Centennial Review, California Quarterly, Kayak, Hanging Loose, Sensitive Skin, and the anthologies Orbis, Brevitas, Speaking the Word, Icon, etc. She edits White Rabbit, a zine, co-founded the Helen Review, a literary magazine, and edited a poetry section for Downtown, a weekly newspaper, for 10 years. In addition, she collaborated on Gorilla Kisses, a musical comedy review with Carol Polkavar, and directed poetry and workshop programs at ABC No Rio and the Living Theater. Dorothy Friedman August, welcome. Hey, Dorothy.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Okay. These poems are pretty much all in my short poem collection, which should be coming out in 2025, called Open-Ended. And there'll be drawings with it by Anthony Hayden Guest and a couple of other people, I believe. So, okay. The first poem. There is no reason to read this page. There's no reason to read this page. You won't find any meaning here. The mystery of life will remain unsolved. May as well talk to the tree as me, or the man with the one arm who loves you, or the man down the street, the cerulean man with no clothes, or the bandito man who never arrives. May as well get fat on lies, chains of them, as you read this page by page, filled with hypocrisy. May as well read about all the little girly scandals or the excessive lexicons. There's no excuse for you to stop within the borders of this 8.5 by 11 page made of excuses, because you won't find any meaning inside about who we were, why we waited, or how we finished. The second poem is dedicated to my partner, deceased, Gary Azon, photographer, who died in 2007. It's called The Boy Was Dead. The boy was dead, yet he knew and saw exteriors, black leather and chains, on Michael and Lucinda. The boy was dead, yet he knew and saw breath coming out of other people's mouths. But when he called out to them, they passed him by without speaking. "Stop," he shouted savagely, but his anger turned to tenderness, which covered the brutishness with a swan's breath. The boy stepped out of his own body with the steady, dreamlike walk of the orphan, pursing his lips and letting his own breath out in a wild song, pushing out a song about the whole journey of childhood in which he always traveled alone and unnoticed. And then he wept with a kind of fiendish ecstasy, trying to invent the sounds made by other people. Children's things. Children jump in, jump out. They don't get it. I don't get it either. But I don't tell anybody, just like I don't tell anyone that I'm blind. I just keep walking down this busy street, waving my hands up and down, trying to fly like a bird, but no one notices I am blind. The sky is directing a pattern of its own, dots and dashes on the screen, direct traffic to the land of flying fish, and though I can't see them, my inner eye makes out birds, trains, and the children's things we are arriving on. Okay, this poem is called Then As Now. Then as now, Allen Ginsberg and I are again together without touching. In my mind, Allen is sitting behind his desk, free associating and punctuating Gregory Corso's poem, while down the street, a beggar implores the neon lights to shine again. It's easy to comprehend once you realize there is no meaning, like Monet's water lilies just exist to be seen in the here and now, and the then and there will take care of itself. And as for you and me, we're looking for other potholes to fill. And by the way, why is this thing with loopy eyes following behind us? But don't worry, it will be okay. Try to stay positive. Your dreams can wait. Live more and dream less. You won't let anyone dither with your memories. Honor them. And this thing you are, Wonka, or another word, perhaps battleship, tomato, trumpet, you are all of them and more. Given the weather, I thought I would read this. First words of the cold season. Winter takes you in like a child, back into the world you once knew, with its hedges of snow and ice, their remnants lodged inside the heart. Winter takes you back to where you were loved by the snowman, crunching your bones with his fists. History glazes over the details of how you fled across the ice to escape, and now you are a child, faded into mist in the winter chill, remembering his embrace and how love and fear melted into one another. In our next life, what has the human season produced? Spontaneous heat and havoc. Here we are browsing each other among the buttercups. So take this cup of modernity and elucidate your feelings. We are falling backwards into a field of possibilities. Catch us before we land. So the past is the past, but what about new beginnings for Johnny Appleseed, standing so tall and brave at the helm of this tomato? Love us, he pleads, twirling the stem, for we are sick of nations and wish to belong to ourselves. And as we film his alienation, we wonder if he can be satisfied to live in these altered states and will accept this offer of a trapeze to expand the library of missing sounds. Conscious of change and smiling at remnants of ourselves, we suddenly become infatuated with myth and empathy for the needs of seeds like J.A. The temperature is just right, yes, to demystify worry and expand our wingspan. So we will rise to new heights, though for some it is humid today, without doubt. So even the devious turtle dove braces its wings just before the twister propels us north. And since John Ashbery was mentioned, I guess I should read something to do with John Ashbery. Falling into postmodernity to John Ashbery, we thought that language had died when a shell named John broke out from his peer group of symmetrical rows and refused to buckle down to the gray walls which dictated the shape of inanimate objects. Hey, said the wayward shelf, don't hang on to those gray walls as if it's all there is to anchor you to eternity. There's more to explore. Let go of your inhibitions and soar above the closet of hung up coats. A shelf had wanderlust. The idea caught on, and soon all the shelves were rattling on their hinges. Eventually, all the chains and tables were flying around the room. Before animation was sterility, we moved on stiff hinges till John showed us that all ways are the right way and invited us to the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. So we followed John down the rabbit hole and fell into post-modernity. And John liked him being mentioned. I guess he collected that poem in something or other that he put out. And I guess there's another poem by John, but I guess I'll just read one last poem. Okay, I guess I'll read the poems of Allen Ginsberg. I'm big on eulogy poems, so I don't write that many of them, but anyway. So this is called Last Breath to Allen Ginsberg. The last breath is a two-step, too brief to tunnel time out of. We danced twirling art out of his final tremblings. Heaven was waiting for Allen's arrival. It had long been anticipated by the seraphim. So while Allen came in quite suddenly in the night on the arms of Buddha, he was given a place near the head of the table beside Whitman and Blake. Now, come join us on the slopes of poetry where our uninhibited poet prays to bring us closer to God's lyric. It was on one of these rocky seas that the last breath began its precarious dance. On one of these seas, it released itself. On one of these days when no one could tweeze the leaves, we all floated up before dinner. Breath of love, that letting go of love, of all the syllables we fight so hard to speak, as our blanket wraps us in the final sleep. Thank you, everybody.
Dorothy Friedman, thank you. That was lovely. And I bet all the snowmen love you too. Wonderful. Dorothy Friedman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me here, everybody, and reading with all of you. I guess I'm supposed to mute myself now.
Yay. All right. The snowmen still love you anyway. They always will. Our next reader is out of DC here. Well, for now, Daine Rieves. He's a physician scientist. He was born and educated in Mississippi and trained in critical care medicine at the National Institute of Health. He's the author of the poetry collection When the Eye Forms, 2005, and Red Camaro. Oh, that's cool. Just out now from Cornerstone Press, as well as the experimental novel Shirtless Men Drink Free. I want to go there. 2019. His poetry has won the Tupelo Press Prize for Poetry and the River Styx International Poetry Prize, and his writing has appeared in the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, Virginia Quarterly Review, the Geographic Review, and the Geography Quiz, which is coming up at the end. And other publications. He can be reached at his name there, www.Daine Rieves. Please welcome Daine. All right, Daine.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. This is so very kind. I hope you can hear me here. So that's okay. Well, perfect. Thanks for taking the time. We've got a little book coming out right after the first of the year. It's called Red Camaro. Maybe you can see the cover. Yeah, I love the cover. I didn't at first because I thought it looked like a Goodyear tire commercial. But then I thought, hey, let's roll with it. And I like it all the much more now because it shows these treads. And that's largely what I think this book is about, what we need to hold on to for traction, the tough times giving us traction. What's the book about? Well, it's about sex, sin, jubilation, and Jesus. It's very Southern. So I'm going to start out with the poem that gives the book the title, Red Camaro. We're going to go back. Many of these poems are from when I was growing up in Mississippi, but I've transfigured them to current times. This first poem is called Overdrawn. My father never mentioned Nixon, nor the draft, a cringeworthy word for called up, or a chill, a banker's take on a payback plan. He never mentioned a letter saying low is high, my draft number like lust for a red Camaro, base price, bare bottom, in a 1970 remake of the model. When I said they might keep it to remember, he said nothing of black vinyl upholstery, bucket seats, or an egg crate grill, chrome lips befitting Nixon. Never thought he'd work out a draft on his account, a bank statement in the mail, one column read monthly, a stick shift, no less, a chrome C on the hood, a C as in Cambodia or college, a fine ride, though he never said the draft had anything to do with those 6 cylinders in a need I never guessed we shared. I doubt my father ever really feared Nixon. For years, he knew we could never outrun in a hot Camaro, a chill in every red number where my rifle should go. I'm going to move on to another poem that deals with my father of sorts, and to a certain extent, my mother. It's called Power Takeoff. You know, if you grew up on a farm like I did, you'd know right away what that's about. Power Takeoff. We know it by the acronym PTO. You know, be careful when you're working around the PTO. That's the drive shaft on the back of the tractor, the turning part that you hook up to the hay baler or to the mill or to a bush hog, whatever. It can grab your clothes and set you to, it can kill you, in fact. Power take off. Tough world, this world. Tough as farmers and tractors with treacherous parts that turn because it takes power in what you hook up to a bush hog to set the blades to turning one for one with energy transmitted via the semi-phallic part that takes your hands to hitch up to manipulate until a spring-loaded pin clicks into a place. I often thought I loved my mother more than my father, thought love tougher than a world I might work out in, if working might click me into that place where metal meets metal, in making me think love might be farmed like a worry of one or another. My father, a fine but tough teacher, tougher than this tough world is, graspable by design, dangerous. If you forget, danger powers the connection. Most of these poems in this book are love poems. In my unusual love poems, I would say I'm going to move on to the sex part, not the act of sex itself, but the sexual organs of sorts. I'm an uncircumcised guy, and then that's a challenge when you grow up with most of the other boys around there who are circumcised. You can you want to be like the other kids. So this poem doesn't really deal with sex. It's noticing you're different, and you want to be like the other kids. Has to do with the Boy Scouts, no surprise. Tarzan. Daylight revealed our bodies, our troop showering wild among trees and improvised plumbing. No scout laughed or pointed, but my feature felt flawed from the beginning. My penis shrouded like a loser in stark naked comparison. Weird in its standout, wrinkled in a hoodie, fear clingy as grapevines our troop leader cut with a machete. We redress before grabbing the vines, worshipped in covenant of high leaf muscadine and Tarzan imitation. Every scout aligned for takeoff and ape man survival. Legend says Mary preserved the holy prepuce in oil, the concoction making its way years later to another Mary, the sinful one, who had no idea why the oil smells special, just that it did. So when a famous Jew came to visit, the second Mary anointed the master in a tincture of his own genitalia. The other scouts push so every guy might swing higher. Tarzan roars as soldiers make him surrender. Mary falls to her knees before the anointing. I smell all the skin I remember not wanting, the odor of cut vines and sap purling, the daylight raw within the liquid. Thank you all. I'll end it there. Thank you again. It's a delight to share the poems.
Thank you, Dwayne. That was wonderful. It was like the Marble Fawn, Faulkner's book there. All right. Thank you, Dwayne, so much. So now we're coming back to New York for our finale here. Before we have the host and our open, Daine Rieves. No, sorry, just did that one. Peter Marra. Peter Marra has had over 300 poems published either in print or online in over 25 journals. Born in Brooklyn, he moved to the East Village in the late 70s when punk rock and Times Square were exploding. Peter's work often deals with the forgotten hidden civilization, usually found in urban areas, people we rarely notice, junkies, the unhoused, sex workers, etc. Bums, maybe. His newest poetry collection, A Dirty Diary of Ordinary Days, recounts his time spent haunting Times Square and the East Village of New York City circa 1977 to 1989, and it will be published soon, really soon, Incunabula Press Media, Incunabula Media. Thank you. Peter, take it away, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me. Sorry about the publisher's name is too hard to pronounce, but I have trouble myself. So anyway, I'm going to read a few pieces from the book that's coming out, The Dirty Diary of Ordinary Days. Like the description said, it's about me hanging out in the East Village and Times Square of the 70s and 80s, you know, taking too many drugs, hanging out with the wrong type of people, and getting in trouble. The first poem I'm going to read, it's a prose poem, I guess. It's called Disco Donut. Disco Donut is located at 14th Street and 3rd Avenue. Disco Donut, where the junkie full of his methadone dose tries to stay upright, attempting to eat his cheeseburger deluxe. One bite, nod off, wake up when his head almost hits the table. Try again. A heroin user Sisyphus, won't make it. Repeat one more time, over and over. Accolades for the burger of the year. Dance on the grainy screen. White doves, petulant and annoyed, flit inside their cages. Emotion melts as she looks up. Her face looked down on her and me as I crawl slowly when she decides to run. Wavy pictures melt in the swelter. The booth closes, the theater closes. The concession stand that dripped blood. No more sales. Wavy heat, the kind that rises from broken concrete in July, carrying the stink of sweat and garbage. Smooth sweat, moist time, and she's running away. Time for me to go and walk away. Heat, time for pain or bad memories. The film unspools and the reel hits the floor. Broken projectors and shadows dancing on the grainy screen, emotion melting as she looks up. A face looks down on her and me, and I crawl slowly and she kills. Wavy pictures captured crimes and offered them for sale. We had been submerged. White fluid spraying her face and boring into her brain, removing the flesh she didn't need anymore. Laughing, she realized how much was wasted and laughed at the loss. Lay down to take a nap now. Please pray for me. Please pray for me. I'll pray for you, the cancer-ridden priest promised her. The odor of holy water and memories of a perverted past were wrapped around him, a shroud of twisted pleasures. Memories of tears and crying woke her up. The laughing time was over at the edge of the night. The crucifix bent over to giggle at her. Explosions. The heretic carried shrunken heads for investigation. These are the artifacts, the flowers that are dated by smiles, the claws exposed in the movie show. Then a twisted smirk, then cries of pleasure, then cries of fear as the sun dies down. She whimpers with the penitence. Heavy black eyeliner and mascara blended with blood, monochrome hues meshed in the rain, accusations on her white blouse, borrowed sexual contact from the clouds. She's going to the after hours clubs now. Save the robots on Avenue C. Crow's Rest on Avenue A, where all the hookers and users were hanging out. I'll score there, cock for money and junk for another high. Yes, we're objects, just things. I don't care. Evaluation of the stimulus is evidence. A sharp increase in the rate of the nervous system deep inside a fantasy kinescope. She knows about the fate healer's twist, the priestess of violence. Shotgun ammunition is in her pocket. She began to discuss a pseudoscience. Ashen flesh, a model sexual arousal, disorder, a result of drugs. That's one. Thank you. This next one is about a date I went on in the early 80s. It's called Flexible Demons. She was clever, rude, loved to joke, and possessed an evil streak. Stopping herself to admire her fingers, we continued walking past CBGB's down the Bowery. Hot July, the air smelled of humidity and unwashed humans. We stopped at her building. Where are you going? I asked. We went inside. A basket descended through a hole in the ceiling and stopped in front of us. She put the money in the basket and tugged on the rope. Up went the basket. A few minutes later, down the basket came with a payload of 2 glassine packets, 2 shots of body bag heroin, the best on the Lower East Side. As an extra bonus, the basket contained a blue tip syringe. I guess we can share, she said. It'll be really cute. Lualak tipped the best. She was referring to the syringe. We could hear whispering all around us, circling but not seen. The walls and floor were uneven. A steel chair was placed in the center of the room. She walked over to it and sat down. A flexible, translucent form was reflected in the over-polished wood floor. We could hear music from the first Blondie album floating underneath our feet, mixed with various muffled noises indicative of sex or violence. Some scummy punks lived below, she told me. Taking the hyper in her hand, she felt for a vein in her left arm, just on the underside of the elbow. She switched the syringe to her mouth and tied off with a leather lace. Quickly, she inserted the needle into the bulging vein and pushed the plunger in, withdrawing after a second. The coveted red blossom gently kissed the clear liquid in the syringe. So pretty, she said, as she admired it. Then, so pretty, in a much lower voice. She kept repeating the phrase until she pulled the needle out and removed the leather lace. Her complexion was albino, and her eyes rolled up. Only the whites showed, albumin. A thin trickle of red crawled down her left forearm. A quick stream of vomit exited her mouth and splashed onto the floor, a glowing green puddle. Tell me some stories, she said. As the high wore off, about 8 hours, she eventually was able to get up and walk around. She played some old 45s on the child's record player, a close-in play that she had lifted from Goodwill. I remember Spanish Stroll by Mink DeVille. Her body was fluid and moved gracefully. She started to talk about her past lovers. My last boyfriend went missing about 2 weeks ago. He went out one night and never came back. I guess the undertow got him, finally. Sometimes I love you, she said. Crawl into my madness. Thank you. Think I'm going to end with this one. It's called Nymphomania Reclaimed. It makes a reference to Daniel Rakowitz, which, if you followed New York City news in the 80s and 90s, he was called Tompkins Square Cannibal. He killed his female roommate and made a soup of her. He's currently incarcerated in asylum someplace. Nymphomania Reclaimed. Billy's topless where Monica worked. That girl murdered by Rakowitz. It's a bad, dark scene. Infinite memory of cannibalistic orgy, sent as a gift to appease the gods. V used to stop by every so often when she had the itch to perform and for a couple of shots. That all too familiar itch that grows at a rapid pace, crawling under her albino flesh. Her odyssey underground reaped the benefits of pain. Leather, sweat, restraints, and artful deceit. Also beauty and solace in the afterbirth. She kissed the lips of the underworld and tongued the heat of desire. Flesh and blood together no longer. A transformation took place. At first, she would clumsily remove her clothes and try and gyrate to the tape, scratchy music. Beat up vinyl returned for posterity. She liked the other dancers, most of them anyway, except Monica, but she didn't know her well at all. Something about Monica frightened V. Monica possessed the touch of the sadist. Everyone had become scarecrows burning in abandoned fields, offerings for the gods. Black leather boot heels clacking on linoleum. She gasped when she heard it, conditioned responses that drenched her pussy. She reached down and gave it a squeeze. Click, clack, click, again and again. Don't you know why you're here? To make those old drunks happy, give them a thrill. You can do it in the back room if you want. We get half the money. Tonight she unveiled her new costume. Black leather studded collar, leather corset, and leather panties. To complement the ensemble, 6-inch high heel pumps that made her ultra feminine, although she could barely navigate the stage while wearing them. creaking of leather, hellfire whip marks, switchblades dancing. She ascended into heaven and rose again on the third day. Purple shadows of ecdysius caught in one long spasm where they could communicate with each other. She was entertained also. She knew it was inevitable. Red footprints, red hand marks on random asses, gloved electric love, and excruciating guilt. She was enjoying it. Jesus said, search the scriptures. John 5:39. The man with the placard limped by as he passed by the marquee and said, world premiere, The Senator's Daughter, starring Leslie Beauvais, Triple X. Deformed tracking shot panting under exhaust-infested atmospheres. The invaders had arrived. It happened while she sat in the back room, wiping her hands and fondling her outfit that was stained with God knows what. Ripped memories swallowed her whole, followed by inverted vocals. As she scried the celluloid, they ultimately spoke to her. Holy gibberish, fractured plasticine figurines. Throw the blood away, examine what's left. Puppies cringing for missing victims. Victims that she recognized. Clad in flaming gossamer, she walked the runway in agony and embarrassment. Pre-recorded hallucinations played in reverse, screeching in an unknown tongue. Pale plaster faces in the gallery patiently waited for her second climax. She merged slowly with the smoky atmosphere. V's fingers worked at a furious pace. Just to finish, they needed to see. Her fingers were soaked and glowing under the clique. They need me. I'll make the flesh climax, Alpha and Omega. Another skin pop, another flagellation. Discarded whips and abandoned hypos. She adorned her head with the antlers and tongued the lips of the dime store Madonna. How is it not? A question demanded, but never satisfied. Thank you.
Peter, that was wonderful. It's been such a pleasure to know
Thank
you
you.
on Facebook. Now to hear you again, and those when you were
Yeah, I'm glad to
commenting,
meet you finally. It's sort of in person.
yeah, right. And you were talking
Yeah.
about all those bars, the Save the Robots and
Oh
Cars
yeah, I was hoping somebody would know.
Pro Bar, Billy's Topless,
Yeah,
Stolen Tonight.
Billy's topless. Yeah,
All
yeah, it
right,
was
thank you
cool.
so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Christopher Shipman, Shippy. Thank you so much, Kevin Gallaher, Dorothy Friedman August, Daine Rieves, and Peter Marra. And next we hear from John Wessick, who is regional editor of the San Diego Poetry Annual and host of Gelato East Fiction Open Mic. Hundreds of his poems and stories have appeared in journals such as the I-70 Review, New Verse News, Patterson Literary Review, and Unlikely Stories, Mark V. He's written novels, poetry collections, and short story collections. His latest chapbook, Explaining Humanity to Electrons, contains poems about physics. Here's John.
And here it is. Wow, just got my author copies, this week, and I thought this would be so obscure that nobody really want them, but a lot of people are wanting copies of it. So this is a poem about string theory, and it's called Einstein's Strings. Einstein winds the old phonograph and drops the needle on a toroidal record that arrived postmarked May 2011. 10-dimensional violins, violas, and cellos fill the room with a symphony of quarks and leptons. Hair messy and dressed in a ratty sweater, Einstein pumps his arms to the rhythm of a D-brain timpani, much better than that rap music Niels Bohr used to play. The strings strike a flat note. Einstein winces and sits down with a legal pad. Needs a little tuning. He touches pen to lips. Let's see. Neumann boundary conditions and an oboe shaped like a Klein bottle. Einstein closes his eyes, sinks into the upholstery, and dreams the sound of cymbals shaped into Calabi-Yau manifolds. Thank you.
Congratulations, John. There's nothing quite like a John Wessick piece that he is able to grace us with each time at Lit Balm. Amazing. We have a short but pithy Lit Balm. We have Vicky, who we love. Vicky's become one of our regulars, and I'm not sure what she's got for us, but it's always fantastic. Vicky.
Oh, thank you so much, Cassandra. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love Lit Balm. This is sort of a hymn to the color yellow, and it's called To Assess Dispositional Optimism. The life orientation experiment, somewhere between orange and green on the spectrum of visible light, the mystery of feelings and the most luminous color of all, ever hopeful, and one of the more popular tests of temperament, often used in primal studies that examine the effects of these dispositions. Initial research found that optimistic camels were less likely to show an increase in symptoms like unsteadiness, tissue distress, ennui, and other laments than pessimistic lionesses, for example. This offers good internal consistency over time with novelty overlaps. Dreams of ochre and lemons wave to us high in the sky. 8 propositions, 4 positive. For example, in uncertain times, I usually expect the best. 4 negative. For example, if something can go wrong for me, it will. The two-faced God loves cognitive dissonance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the color yellow. I hope you're going to do one on every color. I did like your optimistic camels. That was some of my favorites. Thank you so much, Vicky. And we have our fearsome duo to end our lip balm for December. And it's Badass Cindy from Badass Brooklyn. Sis, what do you got?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I want to let Mark Vincent know that I am currently reading Moby Dick. I tried to read it years ago, never got into it, and now I seem to be doing better with it. And it makes me, of course, think of him and Greylock Mountain and all that.
Excellent.
But the poem I'm going to read has nothing to do with Moby Dick. So I don't like the old whale poems or poems from whales. I'm going to do another I Am the Girl poem.
Yay.
A couple of people had mythological references, and this is the mythological version of I Am the Girl. I am the girl with the mythological ethos. I am the girl with a soft spot for eros. I am the girl who won't sleep with Narcissus. I am the girl who has slept with Echo. I am the girl who breaks glass with Dionysus. I am the girl who has drunk the fine nectar. I am the girl who hangs out with Hermes. I am the girl who writes odes to Hades. I am the girl who's as lame as Hephaestus. I am the girl who combs Medusa's hair. I am the girl who calls Zeus her father when I'm not calling God my father. I am the girl with 2 Achilles heels. I am the girl who meditates with Pandora. I am the girl who edited the Odyssey. I am the girl who has reached Mount Olympus. I am the girl who turns gods into poems.
Oh, I love it. I love this series of I Am the Girl. So good. Such a great one, Cindy. I would like to hang out with Pandora and Muse with you. That's a great
Dionysus.
We have Bob. Now, no pressure, Bob. It's the last lip balm for the year. We always have you as our final word for the open mic. It's always something that's pithy and philosophical and witty and sometimes a bit odd. And I live with this for the rest of my day here. So in Australia. So what have you got, Bob, for us
No pressure.
from the kitchen?
The scene. One is able to see what can be seen. The difference always how it is interpreted. The man or woman, also animals that have sprung from the forest. Their calls confused with the language the bears or birds might use if suddenly startled.
It's brilliant, and it's got a bear, and it ends on being startled. It's a perfect little morsel. Thank you, Bob. And Bob's got a book out too, so I'm sure you can have a look at that. He's got a wonderful cover that he created as the frontispiece. So, Mark, back to you for a final word.
Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight. And well, this is the last show of the year. Our next show, I believe, will be on January 26th. Is that right, Jeff?
Well, I think it might be the 25th. But yeah, it's going to be Jerome Sala and John Dimming and Sarah Arvio, and one more to be announced we're waiting to hear from. So we look forward to seeing you again in the new year. And congratulations, Mark, Cassandra, John, for putting all this together, and everybody, our guests from all over the world today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Such a cornucopia of work.
So for the last poem of the year, I decided I have to read this one. It's called "My Dad Was Sued for Infringing a Swiss Candy Patent." He didn't care. The lawyers, he said, found ways around it by switching up the packaging, loosening the brand name by inserting 2 O's, by working a little niche audience to a little chanson that bounced around like a rubber ball in his flexible but firm Swiss head. So that was my father. Thanks so much, guys. Lots of love, poetry, great Christmas, great holidays, and we'll see you in January. And big love. We'll be fine. Don't worry.
Like a red rubber ball.
Yep.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Thank
Mark
you.
and Cassandra and Jeff.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
happy holidays, everybody.
Take care,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Great hearing you all.
Stay warm, be safe.